Today we'll be seeing Al Held. This one is one of the earlier works. There was something else painted beforehand. He really wanted to define the edge with a brush. I mean, it was actually never exhibited during his lifetime. Hello everyone, I'm Filip Manilov and we're back here with another video about the Y-Cube Gallery exhibition. Today we'll be seeing Al Held, and he's the American abstract expressionist artist, and although I think he sees himself as the reductivist expressionist artist, which is almost a minimal. Waiting for this guy to pass. I'm just walking on this Bermondsey street. It's usually very nice, and it is nice today, but like the weather is a bit cloudy, as you can see. Yeah, so he's regarding himself as a reductivist expressionist artist, as he calling it. So not so minimalist, but in a way quite synonymous of the word. I mean, there we have it, Y-Cube the gallery. This exhibition right here is showcasing a range of his artworks ranging from 1960s and all the way up to 2000s. So we'll see quite a lot of different styles throughout his career and how it was evolving. Very interesting. So in this room we can see a few of his artworks ranging from right to left, and I will show you as we go, and they're all just showing different eras of his works. So this one is one of the earlier works that he's done, and it showcases different volumes and shapes that are actually being come together after some period of work. If you know his earlier works, were just very abstract and almost disconnected bunch of colors, and in this work they're starting to assemble into some shapes and squares and triangles that are being brought together on this canvas, but they still have very rough edges, as you see right here. He really wanted to define the edge with a brush rather than being hard with some sort of tape when he'll be using this technique later on in his life. This is just him bringing all the volumes and the colors together. So this is one of the works from his later period, and I think it's within 5-10 years range of the previous one, and as we can see the shapes are starting to gather even more together, and the colors are super separate and they're almost blocked, and he's exploring different letters, and the letters as in shapes of the letters rather than any other linguistic meaning and connotation between them. So this is called the I-beam. I think it's 1961 to be fair, and we're seeing one of the interesting details, I guess, in his earlier works, that he's using and painting them over and over again. Even once he's done his work, he's in the process of searching the right definition and the right shapes, and you see the canvas is very structured and is right here. You can see it's been painted over and over again. And moving on to the next one, I think it's a bit anachronical. I think this is one of the works that's after another period of his career, and this is a black and white series. He first moved out from the colorful paintings that he was making, and he just went to plainer white and black combinations. And this one I would say is a series that went beyond that, and there was an improvement on the black and white and improvement on this exploration, and this was the addition of volumes and some kind of volumetric spatial representations of shapes that are adding a bit more structure to the painting. And this is another work that is just showed his black and white series, and I mean, I just think this painting is amazing, and the scale of it and the vastness of the spaces that he creates within the canvas are just in capturing the spirit, and I think it's absolutely amazing and super inspiring. So I'm gonna try to capture it with the right color, because it's really nice and black, and the whites are really popping, and you can see how different shapes evolve and emerge the longer you look at it. So it almost seems very broken down, almost like a piece of a broken glass, but when you start actually looking at the shapes assembling themselves, and I just think this is just unbelievable how he's doing it, and the sheer precision of lines. I mean, that's crazy. Just looking at this. They're very thin if you were to look at it. And I'm actually quite curious how he was making them, because this is something that's not easy to achieve at all, even if you're using tape on anything, any sort of technique. And because they also follow very straight lines or curved lines that have to represent a certain shape, for example a certain like, let's say, circle over there, it is very easy to be making a mistake. And yeah, I mean, he properly mastered this geometry of the painting. I would also notice that, as I was mentioning before, he was working over the painting. So even you can see here on the edge, there was something else painted beforehand and then repainted over that. So as you see, the lines are slightly different and they're not exactly where they were initially, which I think is very interesting, and very interesting that he actually left it like that. Like, it kind of gives us a bit of a history for the painting. So these are the paintings from his later period after the black and white series, and Al decided to get away from the color into the black and white series, and this period, it took him, well, 12 years, and he thought he would stay with it for a couple of years, and it took way longer. Very interesting artworks. They're becoming architectural in a way, where we see basically the architectonics of different shapes and how they interconnect between one another to be creating these various spaces that we see. I would say what's interesting with these artworks, and as I was mentioning that he is painting over them, once there he's in the search of the final result. But these ones, because he understood that once he painted a lot of times, there was a lot of paint that built up, and it was creating a structure that was basically distracting the viewer from the actual painting and the final result that he produces. So instead he started sanding the paper, the actual paint and the painting, and he was using his own sanding tool in order to achieve this flatness, and this was a very labor-intensive process. But as a result of this technique, we're now seeing a very clear painting that has a very flat definition, and you really don't see any obstruction that is created by the layers of paint underneath. So it is really flat now, and you see there's no additional shadows created, and you are not being distracted by this quality of the paint rather than the final result that is being intended in his artworks. And you're seeing how he's using the color to start accentuating and dividing different shapes that he was using earlier in his black and white series, because he wanted to gain and add more depth to the painting, and he was able to achieve it by going back to the color schemes. On these newer paintings, the edge is much more defined on the canvas, so he's not really going beyond the space. And in some of them you can see he's color coding different blocks of colors for him to understand where such thing goes. Yeah, I think these are very interesting notes. I didn't quite notice them in the first place, but I guess they show a bit of a history of the painting creation. And guys, if you like the content like this and exploration of various paintings, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and we'll be showing you more different works of various artists. So these are smaller series, and I think these are actually not painted but rather watercolor, and these are from his later periods of life when he's already using different colors and back to the color techniques and addition of the shapes. Yeah, I think this one particularly, I guess, is from a bit of an earlier period, and you can see it's a bit more simple, but he's adding a bit more of a shading and a bit of a lighting aspect to the paintings, so you get different volumes and different atmospheres and spaces that are created within it, I guess. So these are his later works. I guess that's end of 1990s and beginning of 2000s, and he's really bringing the complexity into the spaces. He's now beginning to break down his shapes into even more colors, and that's why they're gaining this checkered pattern that you see over here, and this is bringing even more complexity. So this is how you can tell that these are one of the later works of his, because again the colors are broken down and the shapes are broken down into smaller patterns that are created within. But then we're seeing almost more spaces and architectonics appearing within the painting. So this one is one of his latest works, and certainly the largest, and you can see how he's adding different types of shapes. So he's started to create more natural looking, almost biological forms in the strict geometry that he's already showing in his painting, and that's like an addition to his technique, so they become a bit more fluid and flowing, as you see. But he's still marking these shapes in a smaller segment, and yeah, I mean, the complexity of it is just unbelievable. And this work that's behind me, it was actually never exhibited during his lifetime, and now we're lucky to have it in White Cube. I mean, this is great space for it. It barely fits here, even though the ceiling height over here is quite large. But yeah, it's just a masterpiece of his work, I would say. Very interesting use of perspective. So Al-Hal was talking about the use of perspective as a tool rather than a certain metric or definition that one should use, and he's using it multiple point perspectives for different shapes to create this very interesting volumetric effect. So you're not entirely sure where exactly it vanishes. I would say that from the exhibition, this one is my favorite painting, and I know that it costs 2.4 million, I think, euros, which is, I mean, yeah, I guess it's worth it. I would say that personally his earlier works are my favorite, and I prefer them to the later works. They have a bit, for me, they're just a bit more interesting, and you're not being distracted by too many things that are going on, unlike as you see the later paintings where he's dividing them into various little shapes and sub-shapes and then squares. In these earlier works, actually, I didn't mention that Al-Hal was talking about multiple layers and just going over the painting as the process of like creation, the painting, and he refers to art as the act of becoming, and in a way he's searching for the final result in the process of the painting rather than coming into it and just already knowing coming with a predefined result. And they're almost, these virtual shapes almost becoming real shapes. They inhabit the space, and they are with their weight almost a sentinel to a particular place. So these are a series of his earlier works that are again just some very heavy shapes. I think I'll be finishing the video here. It's becoming quite long anyways, and subscribe to the channel, leave a comment of what's your opinion on the artist, and like the video, share with your friends. See you in the next one.